Chapter 667. At least in Mayan's memory, no one has ever achieved a breakthrough in their cultivation through the method of gathering yin to nourish yang. But listening to the woman's words, Zhao Hai really used this cruel and evil secret method to enhance his cultivation. The woman slowly pulls up the corner of her mouth, revealing a bitter smile. The cultivation furnace method is extremely vicious, but of course it's effective. It's just that the people of the Yinwu continent don't know about it. Because the people of the Yinwu continent haven't molded their spiritual roots, so they can't use spiritual power. Naturally, they can't use this cultivation furnace method of gathering yin to nourish yang. Mayan looked startled, slightly narrowing her eyes. You mean, you and Zhao Hai aren't people of the Yinwu continent? Who are you? Hearing Mayan's question, the woman stares blankly ahead, as if she's stupid. Her remaining eye has no focus, and her face is filled with despair, but tears roll down from the corners of her eyes. I am who? I've almost forgotten who I am. My name is Li Xinru, an outer disciple of a small sect in the Xiuzhen continent. Listening to Li Xinru's brief account, Mayan, including the Nether Flame Army, shows a shocked expression. It turns out that this Li Xinru wasn't born in the Yinwu continent, but in a higher plane than the Yinwu continent, the Xiuzhen continent. People of the Xiuzhen continent are born with spiritual roots, but there are also good and bad spiritual roots. The best single heavenly spiritual root is a rare peerless genius in the Xiuzhen continent. As for the weakest of the 5 spiritual roots, it was almost impossible for them to cultivate, and they were no different from mortals. Although Li Xinru isn't completely unable to cultivate with mixed 5 spiritual roots, it's still a very poor quality 4 spiritual roots. So, she can only be an outer disciple of a small sect with no future. Unfortunately, she's beautiful and has no power to resist. She's often harassed and violated by the sect's stewards. When she was most helpless, she met Zhao Hai. Zhao Hai isn't a native of the Xiuzhen continent, but a genius who broke through the peak of the pre-celestial stage in the Yinwu continent, went through the thunder tribulation, and finally molded his spiritual root to ascend to the Xiuzhen continent. However, such a genius, when he came to the Xiuzhen continent, became a waste not much different from Li Xinru. This was because Zhao Hai only had 4 spiritual roots. At best, his spiritual roots were slightly better than Li Xinru's. Li Xinru showed a sad smile. At that time, Zhao Hai often comforted me and helped me avoid the harassment of the steward. Slowly, I fell in love with him. One day, he was bullied by an inner court disciple and was humiliated by being pressed into a cesspool. He finally couldn't take it anymore and said that he wanted to take me to a place that was as beautiful as a paradise. He said that we don't have to worry about anyone bullying us there. We can proclaim ourselves as kings and do whatever we want. Mu Yin sneers. He's talking about the Yinwu continent? He couldn't survive in the cultivation continent anymore, so he had no choice but to escape back here to act like a tyrant. Hee, what a great talent, what a great ambition. Li Xinru continues with a hoarse voice. When I first returned to Yinwu continent, I really felt like I was in heaven. Chapter 668. At this point, Li Xinru's face began to distort. His hoarse voice became sharp, as if it contained endless remorse and anger. Zhao Hai, that scum, I didn't think that, in order to maintain his youth, he would actually use that evil cultivation method. Use me as a cultivation furnace, absorb all the spirit roots in my body, and then throw me to that animal Zhao Tianxiang. From a high and mighty cultivator, I became a plaything inferior to even mortals, a cripple. Zhao Hai, why did you do that to me? I can't wait to drink his blood, eat his flesh. I can't wait to tear him to pieces. Mu Yin sneered. I'm not interested in listening to your hatred. I just want to know where Zhao Hai is. Where are my companions that he captured? Li Xinru raised her eyes and looked at Mu Yan's young and delicate face. Her remaining eye revealed a look of jealousy and longing. She swallowed her saliva and said, I once put a kind of spirit fragrance on Zhao Hai's body. This fragrance can last for decades on his body. As long as I use the soul-chasing insect on me, I can find his position. As she spoke, she frowned and actually dug out a piece of flesh from her thigh. She took out a dark yellow little bug from within. You just need to feed this soul-chasing insect a little bit of your blood, and then let this insect rest on your palm. It will point you in Zhao Hai's direction. Mu Yin looked at the insect with a blank expression and reached out to take it. On the side, Ru Yin quickly said, "Miss, let this subordinate do it." Hearing this, Li Xinru's eyelids twitched, but she didn't show any abnormality. Instead, she said, "You'd better hurry. After that old thief Zhao Hai catches a woman, he will use medicine to warm her for an hour at most, and then he will start to take the yin to replenish the yang. If you're late, even if you can rescue her alive, the woman's innocence will be ruined." Ru Yin became more anxious when she heard this. She immediately wanted to catch the soul-chasing insect. However, before she could move, Mu Yin had already reached out and grabbed the soul-chasing insect, pinching it between her fingers. Li Xinru's forehead was covered with fine beads of sweat. She urged, "Hurry up. Why don't you drop your blood on the soul-chasing insect? Time waits for no man." Mayan chuckles, lowering her head to look coldly at the already haggard woman. "Do you really think I'm a fool? You can't even recognize the soul transfer goo?" Li Xinru's only eye suddenly widened. How? How do you know it's teleportation?" She abruptly covers her mouth with her remaining hand, her eyes filled with shock as she looks at Mayan. Mu Yan's eyes were full of deep disgust. "You said that Zhao Hai is a scum, but what good thing are you? You want to use the soul transfer goo to take over someone else's body and get rid of your current situation. As long as Mu Yan's blood drips on the soul transfer goo, the soul transfer goo will follow the blood and quickly drill into Mu Yan's body. At first, the soul transfer goo would not cause any harm to the host. However, with the passage of time, the soul transfer goo would slowly devour the host's soul. When a person's soul became broken and weak, it would be easy for another soul to take over and be reborn. After Mu Yin encountered the gold silkworm goo, she began to rummage through the books on goo worms in the space tower. Chapter 669. Hearing Mayan reveal her purpose, Li Xinru knows that she has no more hope, and her face distorts in a split second. She lets out a mournful scream. "I'm a high and mighty cultivator. What's wrong with wanting a new life? That scum Zhao Hai, if it weren't for him, how could I end up like this? Your body is so perfect. If you molded a spiritual root, it would definitely be at least 3. Give it to me. Give it to me. This way, I can return to the Xiuzhen continent. Give your body to me." Amidst the scream, Li Xinru's body suddenly softens and falls to the ground. A streak of white light suddenly rushed out of her broken body and rushed straight towards Mu Yin. The Nether Flame Army has never seen such a bizarre and chaotic scene. Each and every one of them is so shocked that their complexions greatly change. Ru Yin and Guanhu roar, "Miss, be careful," as they ruthlessly strike Li Xinru's soul. However, that fist, which contains powerful internal force, directly passes through Li Xinru's body, not causing her the slightest bit of harm. Li Xinru is almost completely insane at this time, desperately bumping into Mayan. It seems like she wants to knock out her soul and replace it herself. Mayan's expression doesn't change in the slightest, but the corners of her mouth hook up in a mocking arc. The next moment, the sound of a zither resounds. 7 swords of different colors revolved around her, forming a colorful sword array. When Li Xinru's soul hits the sword array, it immediately lets out a mournful howl, and it actually starts to burn. "Ah, it hurts. It hurts. Impossible. How can you use spiritual power to burn my soul? This is the Yinwu continent. It's impossible for spiritual power to exist. Who the hell are you?" I don't want to die. I don't want to die. Zhao Hai, even if I become a ghost, I won't let you off." The white ball of light is thoroughly burned, and Li Xinru's voice also dissipates into the air. The Nether Flame Army looks at Li Xinru's corpse on the ground, each and every one of them with lingering fear. A thought emerges in everyone's mind. The Xiuzhen continent, what kind of powerful and frightening place is that? It's just that the most useless cultivator in the continent can actually abuse his power in the Yinwu continent, acting recklessly and unscrupulously? What about the other people on the Xiuzhen continent? "Miss, what should we do now?" Ru Yin anxiously said. "No one knows where Zhao Hai is. If we can't find him, then Haitang and Yin Haoyin, Mu Yin took back the Chidua sword spirit, looked at the soul transfer insect in her hand, and said in a deep voice, "Don't worry, I have a way to find Zhao Hai and Haitang." The soul transfer insect doesn't exist in the Yinwu continent, so it must have been brought down from the Shuzhen continent. Then Zhao Hai must have come into contact with it. Chapter 670. Everyone in the Nether Flame army stares blankly for a second, and immediately begins to move. Although they don't understand how the Miss is going to use the soul transfer insect to lead the way, in their hearts, the Miss is omnipotent. Everyone's speed is extremely fast. In the entire Weiyuan General's mansion, all the beasts who humiliate women are sentenced to capital punishment. As for the other guards, their cultivations were all crippled. As for the main culprit, Zhao Tianxiang, the people of the Nether Flame army don't even make a move, because the women who have woken up all hate him. In the end, the flesh on Zhao Tianxiang's body is bitten off by these women. In hellish pain and fear, he walks towards the end of his life. Ru Yin originally wanted to give these innocent women some drafts and let them leave safely. But these women have long lost hope for humanity and survival, because they know that they have lost their innocence and become neither human nor ghost. Even if they return to the place where they used to live, they will not be accepted by their relatives and friends. They kneel on the ground, begging the Nether Flame army to take them in. In the end, the Longevity Camp and the Tianji unit respectively incorporate some of these pitiful women. When the affairs of the mansion have just been dealt with, Mayan's zither also comes to an end. This time, she launches the fourth skill that she has just learned after advancing to the third level of Shun Musician, Summerbug's Language of Ice. If Thriving and Thriving is a skill that works on plants, then Summerbug's Language of Ice is a skill that works on all insects. It's just that Mayan has just obtained this skill, and it takes at least a quarter of an hour to activate it. Moreover, this quarter of an hour of playing can only barely control a very low-level insect. But for now, this is enough. The soul transfer insect on the Tianimo Qin quickly scurries away from the sound of the zither and crawls in one direction. Mayan puts away the Tianimo Qin and leaps to catch up. "Keep up, I already know where it is." "No way." Guanhu murmurs, "An insect can really lead the way." Ru Yin shakes her head with a bewildered look. "Now I really believe that the Miss is omnipotent." With a splash, a basin of cold water is poured on Yin Haoyin's body, making him sober. A bone-chilling chill seeps into every inch of his meridians from the wounds on his body, making him tremble uncontrollably. Even though Yin Haoyin's endurance was top-notch, he still let out a low, muffled groan under such cold pain. "I don't like to force women, but you only have two choices right now," Zhao said condescendingly with contempt and indifference. "I don't like to force women, but you only have two choices. First, become my cauldron. Although your talent will disappear completely, it will at least allow you and your lover to struggle at death's door. Second, you can resist to the death. Although I don't like to force a woman, I'm currently lacking a furnace. In the end, you will still obediently lie under me. As for your lover, I guarantee that he will suffer 100 times more than death." Yin Haoyin struggled to open his eyes. What he saw was Zhao's cruel smile and Feng Haitang's fearful but stubborn tearful eyes. "You are called Feng Haitang, right? Now, make your choice. Do you want your lover to live or die?" Feng Haitang glared at him fiercely. "Why don't you kill us both? I'd rather die than be tainted by a beast like you." Chapter 671. Feng Haitang's body was still tied with a strange rope, but Zhao Hai didn't know what it was. After being tied up, her whole body was powerless, completely unable to resist. Zhao Hai slowly walked over to Yin Haoyin's side, looking down at Yin Haoyin's man-eating eyes, and laughed lowly. "So, you're already awake." "Haoyin," Feng Haitang cried out, wanting to rush over, but because her legs were weak, she fell to the ground. "Haoyin, how are you?" Yin Haoyin opened his mouth to speak, but he couldn't speak, only making meaningless syllables. Zhao Hai sneered. "So you're a mute without a tongue. I don't know why you would like this kind of cripple. It would be better to follow me. Even without your cultivation, it's still better than following this waste." "You shut up," Feng Haitang roared. You scum, what qualifications do you have to compare with him? In my eyes, you're not even as good as an animal. Before Feng Haitang could finish speaking, Zhao Hai lifted his foot and ruthlessly stepped on Yin Haoyan's face. Yin Haoyan's head hit the ground hard, blood flowing. Even the corner of his mouth overflowed with blood. However, under such pain, he unexpectedly didn't make a sound. Feng Haitang's face was deathly pale, her whole body trembling. Zhao Hai smiled sinisterly. Smelly whore, who do you think you are? You dare talk to me like that? Looking at your body, I'll enjoy it later, so I won't touch you. But your lover won't be so lucky. You tell me, should I peel off his skin, or break his bones inch by inch? Zhao Hai lowered his head to meet Yin Haoyan's devouring eyes and laughed lowly. I know, let's start with these eyes. Without a tongue, and then blind, and then unable to hear. You tell me, this kind of waste, what else can he do? Saying that, he squatted down and grabbed Yin Haoyan's hair. Don't dash. Feng Haitang let out a heart-wrenching scream, trying to crawl over from the opposite side, but could only crawl on the ground, unable to move. I beg you, don't hurt him. As long as you let him go, I'll do anything you want. A low cry of despair came from her mouth. Tears rolled down her cheeks, bringing with them a desperate sadness. The moment she saw Yin Haoyan's suffering, dignity, courage, and chastity were all thrown to the back of her mind. She just wanted the man she loved, the man who had suffered countless injuries, to live well. Zhao retracted his hand and looked at her, revealing a satisfied smile. Why didn't you listen to me earlier? I have always been very protective of the fairer sex. He raised his hand, and the rope on Feng Haitang's body seemed to have a life of its own as it quickly and automatically untied itself. Only one ring was left, tied around her waist and abdomen. Feng Haitang instantly felt that her strength had returned. She could move her hands and feet, but the profound chi in her body could not be used at all. As soon as she regained her freedom, she immediately wanted to rush towards Yin Haoyan to check on his injuries. However, she soon heard Zhao Hai's voice, which seemed to come from hell. Take off your clothes. Feng Haitang suddenly froze, looking at Zhao Hai in amazement. Chapter 672. Yin Haoyan struggled under his feet, making noises like that of a trapped beast. Zhao Hai was careless for a moment, and he staggered. His eyes turned cold, and he suddenly flashed to Yin Haoyan's side, heavily stomping down. Puff! Yin Haoyan spat out a mouthful of blood, accompanied by the sound of broken ribs. Zhao Hai's eyes were fierce, and he continued to exert force. A waste actually wants to resist me? As long as he exerted more force, Yin Haoyan's ribs would be completely broken, directly piercing his lungs. At that time, only death awaited him. Don't hurt him! Feng Haitang screamed. I'll take it off. She bit her lips hard and pressed her hands under her clothes, but she was trembling and unable to move. The shame and despair in her heart made her want to die immediately. But she couldn't. She couldn't just watch Hao Tian die. Even if she had no hope of survival, she had to let Haoyan live until the mist came to save him. Yes, Feng Haitang firmly believed that the mist would come to save them. However, even if she couldn't wait, Yin Haoyan would definitely be able to. Tears flowed down her cheeks, dripping to the ground, turning cold. Feng Haitang untied her belt and slowly took off her coat. The close-fitting underwear revealed the woman's graceful figure. Zhao's breathing quickened as he whispered, Whore, she's really a stunner. Quick, continue to take it off. Feng Haitang closed her eyes, her face pale as death, and slowly reached for the buttons of her underwear. Just then, a sudden bang came from under Zhao Hai's feet. Feng Haitang suddenly opened her eyes and covered her mouth in shock, almost unable to breathe. Zhao staggered back a few steps until he hit the wall. Only then did he stabilize his body. Not far from him, Yin Haoyan slowly stood up. His complexion was abnormally dark, but his broken ribs and the injuries on his body seemed to have miraculously healed. This is impossible. Zhao Hai showed a shocked expression for the first time. How can you stand up after being poisoned by me? Feng Haitang suddenly covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Hao Yin. Hao Yin. Hao Yin walked towards Zhao Hai, step by step. The profound qi around him was like a blazing fire, bursting out. Heh. So you've overdrawn your life force to fight me to the death. Zhao couldn't help but sneer. I don't know what method you have to break free from the shackles of my medicine. In a short period of time, at the cost of your life, you can burst out with all your strength. However, in my opinion, an ant will always be an ant. Even if you unleash all of your battle power, in my eyes, you're just a mantis trying to stop a chariot. Hao Yin didn't seem to hear him at all. He clenched his fist and punched out fiercely. With a loud bang, the beam collapsed with the force of 1,000 caddies, but Zhao Hai easily dodged it. Then, his figure leaped around Hao Yin like a ghost. Puff, puff, puff. Blood splattered everywhere. In just a few breaths of time, Hao Yin's body was covered with countless wounds. The dark red liquid slowly gathered around Hao Yin's body, stinging Feng Haitang's eyes. Hao Yin, you fool. Idiot. Feng Haitang whispered softly, tears falling like rain. He took out 2 life-saving pills and stuffed them into Hao Yin and Feng Haitang's mouths. Grabbing the two's hands to check their injuries, Mayan's brows deeply wrinkled. She waved her hand at the people from the longevity camp behind her. You guys pull out the sword for Haitang. I'll save Hao Yin. Haitang's injuries looked more serious than Hao Yin's. But in fact, as long as she's hanging on to her last breath, she can definitely be saved. But Hao Yin's situation is somewhat serious. Chapter 674. If they don't use the Shen musician right away, perhaps he really won't be able to be saved. However, when the people of the Immortal Battalion want to carry away the unconscious Haitang, Mu Yan's hand is grasped by a hand covered in blood. Save. Haitang, save. Haitang first. I beg you. Miss. This man's eyes are clearly out of focus, and his breathing is so weak that it's almost undetectable. But why is his will still so resolute? Mu Yan sighs softly, saying in a low voice, Fine, I'll save Haitang first. But Hao Yin, you have to promise me that you'll hang on to your last breath and wait for me to save you. Don't forget, the 5 years of master-servant contract you owe me hasn't ended, and what you owe Haitang, you won't be able to repay it in a lifetime. Tears of blood fall from the corners of Hao Yin's eyes, but his face shows a relieved smile as he slowly nods. Mu Yin quickly turns around, the Tianimo Qin appearing between her knees. Bring Haitang in front of me. Zhao Hai doesn't react for a moment, even forgetting to ask why these people suddenly broke into his secret mansion. His eyes follow Mu Yin obsessively, and he doesn't even notice that saliva is dripping from the corners of his mouth. That disgusting wretched appearance is exactly the same as his son, Zhao Tianxiang, until the melodious sound of the zither resounds, and a spiritual energy that he hasn't felt for decades surges in the air. Zhao Hai's complexion instantly changes. You? Who are you? Why can you use spiritual energy? He quickly rushes towards Mu Yin, his eyes full of burning desire and greed. A mortal who lives in the Yinwu continent and is born with spiritual energy. If he were to use this woman as a furnace, watching her under him in pleasure and absorbing the spiritual energy in her body, what a wonderful taste that would be. Seeing Zhao Hai rushing towards Mu Yin, who is engrossed in playing the zither, the people of the Nether Flame Battalion don't move. They coldly look at the man who is like a jumping clown, their eyes filled with disgust and pity. The next moment, a black figure appears like a ghost. The long black sword slashes down with the force of 1,000 caddies. Zhao Hai's eyes widen, and his body instinctively begins to tremble. Soon, however, a sweet female voice is heard. Ingmei, leave this person to me. I'll take care of him myself. The momentum of the blade came to an abrupt halt. Ingmei silently retreated, arms crossed over his chest, coldly looking at Zhao Hai, guarding in front of Mu Yin. Cold sweat quietly fell from Zhao's forehead. He realized that the youth in front of him was very strong, so strong that he didn't even have the courage to resist. His footsteps began to retreat bit by bit, wanting to escape. However, Ingmei brandished his blade and coldly and decisively blocked his path. Zhao's whole body was stiff, but he could only stand in place, not daring to move. Time passed slowly. 15 minutes, half an hour. Feng Haitong's injuries finally began to heal. She was completely out of danger. This time, it could be said to be incomparably dangerous. Although Mayan's elixir could almost bring the dead back to life, it did not mean that it was truly omnipotent. The sword on Feng Haitong's body had directly cut through her heart meridian. Just a little bit more, and it would have pierced through her heart. If his heart was really shattered, even the gods would not be able to save him. But even so, Feng Haiting almost lost her life. Mu Yin wipes the sweat from her forehead, swallows a pill, and says in a deep voice, Yin Hao Yin. Chapter 675. Miss, why don't you take a rest? Ru Yin worriedly looks at her somewhat pale complexion. Mayan shakes her head and doesn't speak. Instead, she plucks the strings again. This time, it takes a longer time. He waited from dusk until dawn. Realm of stars, combined with saint's benevolence, Yin Hao Yin is once again pulled back from the gates of hell. Yin Hao Yin slightly opens his eyes and looks at Feng Haitang. Mayan says, Haitang is fine. She's in perfect condition. A touch of relief flits through Yin Hao Yin's eyes. Then he stares at Mayan in a daze, tears falling from the corners of his eyes. The girl in front of him looks so pale, so haggard, sweat almost completely drenching her clothes and hair. This person is clearly his master, an existence that he swears allegiance to, an existence that he will risk his life to protect. But every time, he can't help her at all, but she has to save him again and again. Yin Hao Yin slowly raises his trembling hand, clenches it into a fist, and presses it against his chest. Tears silently fall from the corners of his eyes. His lips parted, but no words came out. However, the meaning that he wanted to express was so obvious, so resolute and so unrepentant. Miss, I, Yin Hao Yin, will be loyal to you forever, never betraying you. Even if heaven and earth are destroyed, yin and yang in chaos, you will always be my one and only master. Slowly playing the echo breath, Mayan's physical strength and internal force are recovering a little, but the consumed spiritual energy can't be restored for a while. However, it's enough to deal with Zhao Hai. After a whole night, the grievance and anger in Zhao Hai's heart have accumulated to the extreme. Ever since he returned from the Xiuzhen continent, Zhao Hai has always gotten wind and rain in the Yanwu continent. Which mortal here wouldn't be respectful when they see him, in fear and trepidation? Which woman wouldn't fall into his hands if he fancied her? Which sect wouldn't end up in a miserable state of being massacred if they offended him? But this night, he seems to have returned to the hell of the Xiuzhen continent. It reminds him of the days when he was casually shouted at and humiliated by a fat steward of a small sect. Does he want to go back to that past? Could it be that his glorious and wanton life will end here? No, he absolutely did not want it. Zhao Hai glanced at the expressionless Ingmei on the side. Then his gaze fell on Mu Yin, revealing what he thought was an incomparably gentle smile. Today's matter was just a misunderstanding. I was careless and hurt the young lady's subordinate. I can apologize to you. Mayan's fingers flutter, and the Tianmo Qin spins rapidly in front of her, finally hovering in the air. She raised her eyebrows and revealed a charming but cold smile. If you want to apologize, why don't you choose a way to die? Zhao's face twitched, and his expression suddenly became cold. Smelly girl, do you really think I'm afraid of you? You talk big at such a young age. Didn't you just say that you want to deal with me yourself? Now, do you dare to make a bet with me? Mu Yin gently plucked at the strings and casually said, What do you want to bet? Chapter 676. Ingmei's face, upon hearing him say marry me, suddenly became completely cold and gloomy. The Nether Flame Army wanted nothing more than to skin Zhao Hai alive. Instead, it was Mu Yin who laughed lowly and said unhurriedly, Okay, the bet is established. Hearing this, Zhao Hai's heart burst with joy. At this moment, he has already determined that Mu Yin is a descendant left behind in the Yanwu continent by some almighty cultivator. There are some people who don't have good spiritual power, but think they are extraordinary, thinking that they are great. Today, he will teach this little girl the principles of being a person. When she loses the match, lying on his body and moaning, she will know what a real strong person is. Zhao Hai resisted showing a proud expression, swinging the strange rope in his hand, and said in a deep voice, "Little girl, this is what you promised yourself. If you lose, you can't go back on your word, and you can't let your servant make a move." The smile on Mu Yan's face became brighter and sweeter, and she glanced at Ing Mei. Ing Mei bowed. "I will obey Miss Instructions." Zhao Hai couldn't bear it anymore and laughed. "Good. Since that's the case, I will let you experience what a real strong person is." The snaking rope seemed to have a life of its own, whistling towards Mu Yan. Just now, Zhao Hai used this move to easily restrain Feng Haidang and Yan Haoyan. In Zhao Hai's view, Mu Yan is indeed more powerful than Feng Haidang and Yan Haoyan. Her level, at a glance, is already at the pre-celestial stage. But what about the pre-celestial stage? That's just the limit that mortals can reach. And him? He had already successfully refined his body and soul decades ago, and had even passed the Thunder Tribulation. What's more, he still has the magic weapon he brought from the Xiuzhen continent, the spirit-locking rope. How could this little girl in front of him be his opponent? Zhang. The sound of the zither rang out. The strong internal force after marriage fluctuated. The next moment, a scene that shocked Zhao Hai happened. When his spirit-locking rope was about to touch Mu Yan, it actually seemed to have touched some insurmountable wall and directly flew back. The sound of the zither became more and more agitated. Zhao Hai frowned and reached out to take back the spirit-locking rope. Suddenly, an ominous premonition passed through his heart. He quickly dodged to the side. With a whooshing sound in his ears, his spirit-locking rope flew over like an arrow with a fierce killing intent, piercing straight into the wall. If he hadn't dodged just now, he would have been pierced by the spirit-locking rope. Zhao Hai gasps for breath with lingering fear. Looking at Mayan's eyes, there is no longer contempt in the beginning, but it is slowly replaced by graveness. "It seems like I've really underestimated you," Zhao Hai said. "But if you think that you can defeat me with such insignificant skills, then you're just a fool talking nonsense." As soon as he finished speaking, his figure suddenly disappeared from where he stood. The next moment, he has already appeared in front of Mu Yan like lightning. This time, Zhao Hai didn't use any weapons. Instead, he clenched his fist and fiercely swung it towards Mu Yan. However, such a simple attack seemed to have stirred up 1,000 layers of huge waves when the fist wind was unleashed. Even the surrounding air was twisted and swept up, as if it was surrounded by a hurricane, unable to dodge. Everyone in the Nether Flame army stood up straight, shocked and worried. "Miss!" The surrounding pressure made their faces pale, and they could barely stand. Chapter 677. If they were in Zhao's place, they absolutely wouldn't be able to resist it. What about Mayan? Can she block it? Boom! A loud noise. Zhao seems to see a splash of blood in front of him. His face shows a carefree and regretful expression. Such a beautiful body. How many bones would be broken by this punch? It's really a pity. But it doesn't matter. He has a lot of elixirs on hand. At least he can hang on to his life. And then he can do whatever he wants. Zhao's thoughts have just turned, when suddenly the tip of the pin floats to him with a delicate fragrance. He stares blankly at first. Then his heart surges with a strong sense of unease and fear. In a flash, he wants to retreat and escape. But he's still a step too late. A sharp pain comes from his shoulder, and then he watches helplessly as one of his hands flies away. Ah! The severe pain and mournful screams blow away the fog in front of Zhao's eyes. Not far away, he sees a girl in black standing in the wind, her smile languid and charming. The early morning sun falls on her delicate face, so beautiful that it makes people forget whether they're on earth or in heaven. But at this moment, looking at this scene, Zhao doesn't feel the slightest bit of charm, only deep fear and aghast. Why? Why can you dodge the attack? I clearly should have hit you." At that moment, He even feels Mayan's blood sprayed on his face. But why, in the end, Mayan is still intact, while his hand is cut off. Slender jade-like fingers gently pluck the strings. Mayan raises her head, revealing a careless smile. Did the taste of floating like a dream feel good? Would you like to have a more wonderful dream? Zhao is absent-minded at first, then his eyes suddenly widen. You used the sound of the zither to manipulate my senses? No, how is this possible? Even in the Xiuzhen continent, there are very few musicians who can do this. You're just a mere mortal of the Yinwu continent. How could you? Mayan seems to not hear his roar, still unhurriedly saying, Do you know why I didn't let Mei deal with you, but did it myself? Zhao clutched his bleeding hand and stared at her in horror. At this moment, his heart no longer had the carefree and complacent feeling of having succeeded in his scheme, nor did he have any greed or desire. All that was left was fear for this beautiful girl. Mu Yin laughed softly. Don't be so nervous. I want to do it myself, of course, not because I really want to win. I don't even want to look at trash like you who escaped from the cultivation continent in such a sorry state. I'm going to do it myself because there's no one here who can make you suffer more hellish pain than me. Just now, I was really afraid that you would choose to commit suicide. That would be boring. Mu Yin raises her eyebrows and her eyes fall on Zhao Hai's face. But now, even if you want to commit suicide, it's already too late. The smile on her face became more and more beautiful, but in Zhao's eyes, it was like the Grim Reaper's scythe was waving in front of him. Her hands gently plucked the strings, and the melodious music was like a viper, drilling into Zhao's mind, eroding his soul bit by bit. His body swayed and fell down. His eyelids grew heavier and heavier until he could no longer open them. Chapter 678. Welcome to the Nightmare World, the land of extreme evil and floating like a dream. Zhao Hai fell to the ground, his face calm as he fell asleep. Ru Yin asked strangely, Miss, wouldn't it be too easy for him if you let him die in his dream? Even if it's a nightmare, there's no real pain. Before this thought could be finished, Ru Yan's eyes widened in shock. Zhao Hai, who was lying on the ground, began to age at a speed visible to the naked eye. His hair was white, his face wrinkled, and his teeth fell off one by one. In the end, his hair fell off, his nails fell off one by one. His body was bent, and his bones would break at the slightest touch. The expression on his face was one of fear and despair at all times, as if he wanted nothing more than to die immediately. What's going on? Mu Yin smiled faintly. The nightmare world of floating like a dream is called a dream, but it's not just a dream. It's similar to the great illusionary land. When he wakes up, his soul has already gone through thousands of reincarnations. What he experienced in the dream is a purgatory that ordinary people can't imagine, and he can't die or escape. He can only experience it over and over again until he wakes up after a quarter of an hour. Zhao Hai suddenly opened his eyes, trembling as he tried to speak, but found that he could only make hoarse sounds. He was so old that he couldn't hear any sounds, and he couldn't say a complete sentence. He thought he had broken free from the dream, but in fact, he had returned to the nightmare of reality. His soul was trapped in an old body. Every breath was painful, and he could feel the pain of a fracture when he gently lifted his arm. And he didn't even have the strength to commit suicide. Listening to Mu Yan's narration, Ru Yin and the Nether Flame Army were stunned. Then they thought of the floating like a dream that they had heard in their daily training, and they all shivered. The thought of falling into such a nightmare was more terrible than dying 100 times. Mu Yin condescendingly looked at Zhao Hai, who was drooling on the ground, and sneered, You've defiled so many young girls, isn't it to stay young forever? Since you're so afraid of getting old, then slowly enjoy the taste of death in your old age. Hao Yin. Feng Haiteng jumped up from the bed and saw the familiar room furnishings and, Miss, I'm saved? She touched her chest in a daze. There was no sticky blood or the sword that had pierced through her body. The pain in her body had also disappeared without a trace. Feng Haiteng looked at the beautiful girl sitting by the bed, her eyes a little wet. Miss, did you save me again? Where was Hao Yin? How is he? Mu Yin smiles faintly. Don't worry, he's fine. He's as lively as you are. Right now, he's probably handling some matters. Hearing this, Feng Haiteng was delighted. Then, he subconsciously looked around, and the joy in his eyes was slowly replaced by disappointment and sadness. Yin Haoyin was fine now, but he was unwilling to stay by her side. So, he still wasn't willing to accept her, even if he really loved her, even if he could die for her. But between the two of them, there was an insurmountable chasm. In the end, they could only be fated but not fated. Chapter 679. Recalling the moment of life and death that she had just experienced, Feng Haiteng only feels a burst of sorrow and grievance. She can no longer hold back her tears, pitter-pattering as they fall on the back of her hand. Rather than wallowing in self-pity and waiting for Yin Haoyin, that blockhead, to come out of a dead end, it's better to take the initiative and attack. Suddenly, Mayan's soft and sweet voice comes to her ears, carrying a bit of bewitching tone. Feng Haiteng stares blankly, raising her head to look at Mayan with tearful eyes. Mayan turns her wrist, and a porcelain bottle appears in her palm. Sending it to Feng Haiteng, have you ever heard of the saying, raw rice becomes cooked rice? Take a guess. With Yin Haoyin's inflexible character, if he really took your innocence, would he still push you away? Feng Haiteng's eyes suddenly widen. Her entire person scared silly. Little. Miss, what are you talking about? Mayan's smile is exceptionally charming and languid, the porcelain bottle lightly twirling in front of her. Yin Haoyin loves you. I think there's no need to doubt it, right? When I had just arrived, his injuries were actually more serious than yours. However, he should have already fainted, but he grabbed my hand and made me promise to save you first. Only then would he let go. Just a little bit more, and he really wouldn't be able to keep his life. So, you can doubt everything, but you can never doubt his love for you. Feng Haiteng stares blankly, then a blush appears on her cheeks, carrying a sour and sweet joy and sweetness. The curve of Mayan's mouth deepens. Since you're sure that he loves you, then there's no problem with using some radical means. In any case, you just have to make sure that he can become yours as soon as possible. How about it? Do you want to give it a try? The porcelain bottle in her hand twirls again and is delivered to Feng Haiteng. The young girl's bright and beautiful smile has an infectious power that can bewitch people. Feng Haiteng, you're Jun Mayan's subordinate. Don't you even have the courage to handle your own man? At this time, Feng Haiteng's face is already so red that it could drip water. But the look in her eyes becomes more and more resolute. Finally, she clenches her teeth and takes the porcelain bottle from Mayan's hand. Mayan comes out of Haiteng's room and heads southwest. As he approached the kitchen, he heard the voices of Ru Yin and the girls from the longevity camp. Aya, great Commander Yin, this is not right. We need to add water, otherwise it will be burnt. This was a young lady from the longevity camp. She was in charge of the meals of the Nether Flame Army. Ha, Yin Haoyin, you also have such a day. At this time, Ru Yan's gloating voice sounded. I'm telling you, don't even think about running away. It's all your fault for making Haiteng sad, causing her to almost die. You were the one who said that you would wash Haiteng's hands and make soup in the future. You must personally cook this porridge for Haiteng to eat. The smile on Mu Yan's face deepens. After a while, Yin Haoyin came out with a tray, his face covered in dirt. There was a plate of porridge on the tray. Although it looked lackluster, it was his first time cooking, and his skills were not bad. Seeing Mayan, Yin Haoyin revealed an awkward expression. He bowed slightly, silently saluting her. Mu Yin stops his movements and says with an indifferent expression, Haiteng has already woken up. Hearing this, Yin Haoyin's eyes lit up. Chapter 680. From now on, you must take good care of her. Listen to everything she says and do as she pleases. Don't let her be sad again, understand? Yin Haoyin nodded heavily, his eyes filled with remorse and regret. He silently opens his mouth and makes a promise to Mu Yin, then turns around and quickly leaves. Looking at Yin Haoyin's departing figure, Mu Yan's eyebrows slightly raised. As she walked towards her room, she lightly tossed the porcelain bottle in her hand, smiling craftily and languidly. When the rice is cooked, the two of them won't have the energy to mess around anymore, right? She didn't want to go through the experience of running 1,000 miles away to save her subordinates again. However, the porcelain bottle did not fall back into his hands. Instead, it was caught by a wide palm midway. Mayan raises her head in a daze. What comes into view is Di Mingju's handsome face that could charm thousands of women. She was stunned for a moment, and then a happy expression appeared on her face. Your injuries are all healed? The person appearing in front of them is naturally Di Mingju. During this period of time, he has been forced by Mu Yin to recuperate in the space. At this moment, the man standing in front of her was glowing. His deep-set facial features looked as if they had been chiseled by a knife. He was so handsome that he looked like a god who had fallen into the mortal world. Even if it was Mu Yin, looking at the man's perfect face, he couldn't help but fall into a trance. She calmed herself down, grabbed the man's hand, and checked his pulse. However, without waiting for her to rejoice, Di Mingju's injury has already healed. The man's perfect and handsome face was suddenly within reach, his warm breath on her face, causing her nerves to tense up. Yin Yin, can you tell me what kind of medicine this is? The man's magnetic voice was very pleasant to hear. Mayan's complexion stiffens, and she says with a hollow laugh, "It's just an ordinary draft. Give it back to me." She reaches out to take the porcelain bottle back, but Di Mingju easily avoids it. He lowers his head, leans close to Mu Yan's ear, and chuckles. "What's done is done. I also think this method is good. Why don't we try it?" This bastard. Sure enough, he knew what had just happened. Mu Yin glares at him and turns around to leave. The voices of the girls from the longevity camp came from not too far away. Commander Feng is so lucky. A man like Commander Yin actually washed his hands and cooked for her. Hee, no matter how good Commander Yin is, how can he compare to our son-in-law? What kind of person is the son-in-law? He actually condescended to do those things for our young miss. Isn't that obvious? Our young miss is the best woman in the world, and our son-in-law is naturally the best man in the world. Even their child, little master, is also the most adorable, most powerful child in the world. I really hope they can get married soon. The girls' laughter and gossiping gradually faded away. The corner of Mayan's mouth twitches. For a long time, she doesn't know how to put on her facial expression. How come she doesn't know that her own subordinates have started to call Di Mingju's son-in-law so smoothly? Yin Yin, did you hear that? The man's magnetic voice whispered in her ear. When will we be able to fulfill your subordinate's wish? Why don't we cook the uncooked rice first? That's fine too. His warm lips were almost on her earlobe as he whispered softly. In the end, Mu Yin couldn't stand it anymore, and she flees. Looking at the place where the girl disappeared, Di Mingju's eyes seemed bright and dark. Soon after, the corners of his mouth hooked up into a gentle and determined smile. Chapter 681. Yin Haoyin carries the tray into Feng Haitong's room, only to find her sitting on the bed in a daze. Her cheeks are crimson, her expression absent-minded. He jumps in fright and quickly walks to the window, reaching out to stroke her forehead. The rough touch of the big hand makes Feng Haitong suddenly wake up. When she sees her sweetheart so close at hand, Haitong stares blankly, then a happy expression emerges on her beautiful face. "Haoyin, you're here?" Yin Haoyin puts down the tray in his hands, looking at her worriedly. He makes a gesture. "How are you? Does your injury still hurt?" Feng Haitong shakes her head. "I'm already all better." There's an unbearable silence between the two. Haoyin, with great difficulty, Feng Haitong musters up the courage to speak. But Yin Haoyin has already placed a bowl of porridge in front of her. "Eat something first," he gestures. Feng Haitong's expression immediately darkens, and she clenches the porcelain bottle hidden in her cuff. Sure enough, Haoyin wants to avoid the issue between the two of them. He doesn't want to mention it, doesn't want to make it clear, so he interrupts her. Perhaps when her body is all better, he will try his best to push her out again. He only gives her a light sentence. I'm not good enough for you. No, she absolutely won't accept such an outcome. Feng Haitang clenches her teeth. Her mind is filled with Mayan's words. What's done is done. Her state of mind is a mess. So much so that when Yin Haoyan cautiously asks her how the porridge tastes, she simply can't taste it. She just nods mechanically. Yin Haoyan sees her absent-minded appearance and is a little disappointed, but he immediately raises his spirits, thinking about how to make it more delicious next time. Just then, he suddenly hears Feng Haitang's low voice. Haoyan, you should also eat a mouthful, okay? Yin Haoyan looks up and meets Feng Haitang's clear eyes in a split second, his mind swaying. Heat rushes to his cheeks in a split second, but his skin is dark, so it's hard to notice. But at this time, his mind is already apaced, completely unable to think. He only knows to obediently open his mouth and take the porridge that the little hand is offering. The hot porridge enters his stomach, but his mind isn't there. He simply can't taste what the porridge tastes like. Suddenly, a refreshing fragrance assaulted his nostrils. Yin Haoyan's heart suddenly jumped. When he raised his head, he discovered that Feng Haitang's face was very close. The woman's snow-white skin, as well as her light pink petal-like lips, were right in front of him. Yin Haoyan only felt a ball of fire burning in the depths of his body. An astonishing heat flowed through every part of his body and finally gathered at a certain place in his lower abdomen. Haoyan. Feng Haitang's hands wrapped around his neck. Her moist and warm breath carried a trace of gentleness that she usually wouldn't show. Lingering, Haoyan, do you like me? Not only did Yin Haoyan eat the draft that was poured into that bowl of porridge, Feng Haitang also ate it. Yin Haoyan's Adam's apple bobbed up and down. After a long while, he finally came back to his senses and nodded. Feng Haitang smiled gently, her charming eyes like silk. She slowly lowered her head and lightly touched the man's somewhat chapped lips. Hao Tian, do you want me? If you really like me and love me, can you hug me right now? Gulp. Yin Haoyan swallowed his saliva. Chapter 682. But the fire in his body is like a prairie fire burning crazily. Especially when Haitang's body is already slowly approaching him. Those dark red lips are just inches away. That soft and hoarse voice is like a feather, teasing his already stretched heartstrings. Haoyan, if you really hate me, then push me away. I promise, from now on, I will never bother you again. To hell with restraint. Go to hell with reason. Yin Haoyan suddenly pulls Feng Haitang into his arms, fiercely lowering his head to kiss that slowly opening and closing little mouth. His fiery emotions and desires finally broke through his last line of defense and worries, allowing him to release his beast-like emotions without caring about anything else. The night is still very long. Sunlight sprinkles in from the window, falling on Feng Haitang's face. She slightly moves her body, opens her eyes, but suddenly lets out a low moan. So painful, her body feels like it was run over by something, aching everywhere. Feng Haitang slightly frowns. Her brain is still a bit mushy. For a moment she can't remember what happened. Until her gaze turns, falling not far away. On the bed close by, Yin Haoyan's resolute face was sleeping soundly. One of his hands is under her neck, the two bodies tightly pressed together. Her breathing suddenly stops. Her mind suddenly recalls the scene from last night. Feng Haitang's body instantly stiffens, red clouds flying everywhere. She. What did she do last night? She drugged Yin Haoyan, then took the initiative to seduce him. What's done cannot be undone. Heavens, how could she do such a thing? The moment her reason returns, Feng Haitang's face is red as if it's about to drip water. She straightens up, but seeing those traces on her snow-white skin, she immediately becomes even more embarrassed. She quickly reaches out, wanting to touch it, but it hurts, and she can't help but fall down with a muffled groan. However, the expected pain on the bed doesn't come. She is embraced into a familiar wide embrace. Feng Haitang raises her head, meeting Yin Haoyan's calm eyes. She can't help but panic. Haoyan, I. She tightly grabs the bedding, biting her lower lip. Yesterday's matter was just an accident. If you really don't like me, I won't force you. Let's just pretend last night never happened. Just saying these words made her eyes wet with tears. Feng Haitang gritted her teeth and smiled bitterly in her heart. When did she become such a weak person? She took a deep breath and got up to put on her clothes. But before he could stand up, he was suddenly pulled back. Before she could say anything, his warm lips had already blocked her little mouth. The man's thick masculinity instantly swept through every part of her body. Only then did Yin Haoyan let go of her red and swollen lips. Feng Haitang panted and looked at him with misty eyes. What do you mean? Yin Haoyan tensed his body and slowly opened his mouth. A hoarse and muffled voice came from his mouth. Again and again, and again and again. Without a tongue, his words were really unpleasant to hear and could not be recognized. But as Feng Haitang listened, tears welled up in her eyes and she covered her mouth. She understood. She understood everything. This man was using his own way to tell her over and over again. Feng Haitang, I love you. Please marry me. Chapter 683. Then, just as Yin Haoyan's eyes lit up, she suddenly threw herself into his arms. I'm willing. Haoyan, I've long said that in this lifetime, I, Feng Haitang, am only willing to be your bride. Yin Haoyan held her tightly in his arms, and an incomparably gentle and sweet smile slowly blossomed on his cold and resolute face. The Hellfire Valley welcomed its first joyous event, Yin Haoyan and Feng Haitang's wedding. The entire Hellflame Valley was in a festive mood, decorated with lanterns and colored banners. It was indescribably lively. At the wedding, the master of ceremonies, Old Tao, was dressed like a red guangong. He stroked his beard and said loudly, "Bow to the heavens and earth." However, Yin Haoyan and Feng Haitang did not move at all. They did not turn around and kowtow towards the door. Instead, he slowly kneels down in front of Mayan. Feng Haitang doesn't seem to care as she lifts the beaded phoenix coronet curtain, her eyes unblinkingly looking at Mayan. She gently opened her red lips and said, "Young miss, Haoyan is unable to speak. So the words spoken by me today represent the intentions of both of us. What we have today is all thanks to Mississippi. We will never be able to repay your kindness for the rest of our lives." As Feng Haitang spoke, her eyes slowly became moist. If it weren't for Mayan, her Yin Haoyan would have been trapped in the beast-fighting coliseum of the Ghost City, a slave for life, unable to have a good end. If there was no June Mayan, after she couldn't find Yin Haoyan in the end, she would return home depressed, and in the end, she would be randomly married off by her grandfather. Without June Mayan, she wouldn't have today's achievements, wouldn't have today's cultivation. When she was captured by Zhao Tianxiang, she might have already been humiliated and died a miserable death. Without June Mayan, it would be even more impossible for her and Yin Haoyan to end up together. Tears rolled down her cheeks. From now on, we don't believe in heaven and earth, nor do we believe in ghosts and gods. We only believe in you. In this life, as long as I, Feng Haitang, and Yin Haoyan still have a breath left, we will follow you loyally, never regret, never betray. Feng Haitang slowly lowered her head and banged her head on the ground. Yin Haoyan also lowered his head. Dong, dong, dong. The two of them kowtowed 3 times in a solemn and respectful manner, as if they were making a vow for the rest of their lives. Thump. Ru Yin knelt down, and so did Old Tao. Ink Camp, Grand Void Camp, Heavenly Secret Camp, Longevity Camp, inside and outside the hall, people knelt down one after another. Everyone looks at Mayan with an expression full of worship, gratitude, and faith. We don't believe in heaven and earth, nor do we believe in ghosts and gods. We only believe in you. I will follow you faithfully for the rest of my life, never regret, never betray you. Mu Yin presses her temples, feeling a bit of a headache. What were Yin Haoyan and Feng Haitang doing? Why did they have to be so emotional on such a joyous occasion? That's enough, all of you, she said helplessly. Get up, sit down obediently and go back to the wedding. If anyone says another word or disobeys orders, She raised the corner of her mouth, and her smile was cold and evil. Do you want to taste the nightmare dream of floating life? I guarantee that I'll make you feel like dying, and I'll also improve your cultivation. Hearing this, the faces of the people kneeling on the ground changed, and they ran away faster than rabbits. What a joke! Was the nightmare of floating like a dream something that a human could endure? Although surviving the nightmare dream was equivalent to breaking through the bottleneck in his heart, it would be very beneficial for his future tribulations. Chapter 684. Even someone as persevering as Bai Yi-Chen was drenched in cold sweat after waking up from the nightmare dream. His face was filled with panic, and he was on the verge of collapsing. Not to mention them, everyone scattered like birds and beasts, and the wedding continued. Ghastly Flame Valley regained its cheerful atmosphere. She saw that the bunch of rascals had gone to Yin Haoyin's bridal chamber to make trouble for the bride and groom. Even Xiao Bao, who was usually so cool that he didn't look like a child, was egged on by the crowd to join in the fun. Mu Yin recalls the innocent expression on Xiao Bao's face that belongs to a real child, and she feels a burst of sour joy in her heart. In fact, Xiao Bao was really lonely during the 4 years he lived with her in the mountains. In his entire world, there was only her, his mother. Until they left Nameless Mountain, Xiao Bao had the fat rabbit, had Liu Beiyu, had the ink camp, and then afterwards had Hellflame Valley. Then, his face started to show more and more innocent expressions that a child should have. Little Treasure was getting happier and happier by the day. But the smile on Mayan's face disappears. However, Xiao Bao could not stay in this world for long. Bailey Inlo's words were still vivid in his mind. In the Yinwu continent, where there's no spiritual energy, an immortal spirit body can't live past the age of 10. Therefore, she was determined to help Xiao Bao break through the Khanate realm, temper his body and soul, and ascend to the cultivation continent. But in that case, what should the people in Hellflame Valley do? The Yinwu continent has existed for so many years, and for tens of thousands of years, the number of people who could reach the peak of the pre-celestial stage can already be counted on one's fingers. Not to mention that he had passed the lightning tribulation and successfully tempered his body and soul. Even if she uses her Shen musician skills to help Bai Yi-Chen, Yin Haoyin, and Ru Yin successfully advance, what about the others? Could it be that she had no qualms about leaving behind these people who believed in her and leaving on her own? In fact, when she first established the Ink Camp and the Tianji unit, it was purely for revenge against Gong Qianxue and Jian Feng. She even set a time limit of 5 years with Yin Haoyin and the people of the Ink Camp. Within 5 years, when she had her revenge, she would set these people free. She would also leave this world with Xiao Bao. When did she change her mind? She slowly treated these people as family, not just subordinates. At the thought of abandoning her family, her heart felt empty and depressed. Just as he was deep in thought, his body suddenly soared into the sky. Then, she fell into a tight embrace. The man's domineering aura assaulted her senses. It was accompanied by a deep and magnetic voice. What are you thinking about? Ben Jun doesn't like that kind of expression on your face. With the accumulated depression and helpless sorrow, Diming Ju doesn't want to see such a Mayan. His yin-yin, his woman, should be wantonly and ostentatious and be properly pampered in his arms. Who bullied you? Ben Jun will kill her for you. Mayan's heart was originally filled with grief, but hearing Jun Shangdaren's bandit-like words, she couldn't help but laugh out loud. This guy Diming Ju, isn't it because he's been with the Ink Camp for too long that he's become more and more uninhibited? But for some reason, this unreasonable, domineering, and bandit aura ignited hope in her heart. Perhaps this overbearing fellow really had a way to deal with it? Mu Yin tells her what's on her mind. Diming Ju faintly knits his brows, then says unconcernedly, "If you can't bear to, then just bring them along to the Xiuzhen continent." Chapter 685. Do you think that it's that easy for the mortals of the Yinwu continent to enter the Xiuzhen continent? Don't even talk about whether or not they can really step into the pre-celestial Great Circle and trigger the thunder tribulation of forging the body and training the soul. Just the 9 heavenly thunders alone, for thousands of years, There are only a few that can pass through it. Otherwise, the previous Mu Yin wouldn't have taken the elixir that Gong Qinxue gave her before the tribulation to increase her odds of success. In the end, she was schemed against by Gong Qinxue. Dimingju clasps her chin and gently bites her pink lips. What if Benjun can find a way for you? How will you repay Benjun? HM? Mu Yan's mind is thrown into confusion by his provocative actions, and her voice isn't very steady. You? How do you want to repay me? Dimingju slowly moves closer to her ear, his voice unreasonably hoarse. How about we cook the uncooked rice? Mu Yin, scoundrel, can't you forget this joke? Before Mu Yin can get angry, Dimingju carries her in a flash, and they've already entered the space. In the tower, Dimingju narrows his eyes and looks at the top of the tower for a while. He suddenly reaches out and grabs the air. Immediately, a book flies down from the sky and lands in front of Mu Yin. Regarding this scene, Mu Yin was already used to it. Ever since he found out that she has a portable space and a treasure trove, this guy Dimingju often comes to her place and takes books without asking. Dimingju also said that there's a restriction placed on this treasure trove. Only when her cultivation reaches a certain level would she be able to flip through all the books at will. Mu Yin looks at him suspiciously and opens the book in her hand. This book is very thin, and there are only 4 words written on the cover, Mortal Spirit Sculpting, and in the entire book, there's only one Dan recipe, Spirit Sculpting Pill. Mu Yan's eyes brighten at once. The Spirit Sculpting Pill written in this book is simply tailor-made for her. Because the effect of this Spirit Sculpting Pill is to reshape the spiritual root of any mortal without aptitude. Although the quality of the spiritual root that's reshaped wouldn't be high, the best it could be is a mixture of 3 spiritual roots. However, the herbs needed to refine the Spirit Sculpting Pill are all extremely rare and precious. Quite a few of them can't even be found in the Yinwu continent. The refining method was extremely complicated and trivial. It would not be an exaggeration to say that it was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Ordinary people wouldn't go to such great lengths to create a low-grade cultivator with 3 spiritual roots. But to Mu Yin, these problems were not that big of a deal. This was because she had all those precious herbs, such as vermilion flame grass, fire lotus seed, crimson goldflower. Chapter 686. The reason for that was because he already knew that Chu Feng was unwilling to part with the people from Netherflame Valley and wanted to bring all of them with him. Because he was always thinking about her and thinking about her, he helped her find the water cloud fruit, sandwood root, and other elixirs that could only be found in the cultivation continent. Dimingju slowly wraps his arms around her waist. He lowers his head and moves closer to her, pressing his forehead against hers, smelling her breath. Are you touched? Then, fulfill the conditions that you just promised, Benjun? That was rustling, heavy, and soft, with a seductive charm. Mayan's brain was a mess and her whole body went soft. What conditions? Of course. The man lowered his head and planted a gentle and intoxicating kiss on her delicate, snow-white collarbone. Cook the rice. Mu Yin. She pushed the man away, but she couldn't push him away. Instead, he hugged her even tighter. Mu Yin flew into a rage out of humiliation and said, "Don't talk nonsense. When did I promise you?" Dimingju turns his wrist, and the bottle of draft that he snatched last time appears in his palm. He says with an evil smile, "Yin Yin, if Benjun remembers correctly, you taught Feng Haiteng to use this drug. Didn't you also use it on me back then?" Mu Yan's eyelids twitched as the memory of that night from a long time ago suddenly appeared in her mind. At that time, he learned that Dimingju was bullying the weak, bullying Xiaobao, so he wanted to teach him a lesson. She didn't want to think about the result at all. How is this possible? Mu Yin feigned ignorance. You must have remembered wrongly. I would never do something as tasteless as drugging someone. Dimingju reaches out and hooks his arm around her slender waist, grabbing the little lass who wants to escape and imprisoning her in his arms. Is that so? Did I really remember wrongly? He says with a smile that's not a smile. Actually, Benjun wanted to tell Yin Yin that as long as you want to, you don't need to use these things. He stuffs the draft in his hand into Mayan's bosom. His voice became deeper and deeper. As long as you say the word, I am naturally willing to serve you. I don't need any medicine at all, because to me, Yin Yin, you are the strongest medicine. As soon as her voice falls, Mayan's lips are abruptly kissed. His broad palms held her tightly in his embrace, his fiery gaze roaming about. Mu Yan's face is flushed and her heart is beating rapidly. It's as if all the strength in her body has been sucked away. She finds that she is increasingly unable to push Di Mingju away. It was getting harder and harder to resist this man's fiery emotions, especially when this man used that seductive face to look at her, using that kind of voice that could make the ear pregnant to whisper softly in her ear. Mu Yin thinks that in this world, there isn't a woman who can resist the allure of an evildoer like Di Mingju. After the kiss ended, the passion between the two did not extinguish. Instead, it was as if dry firewood had been added, burning even more intensely. Di Mingju picks Mayan up and leaves the space. His eyes were crimson as he stared at Mu Yin, as if he was staring at his most beloved prey. He wanted to swallow it immediately, but his movements are still very gentle as he slowly places Mayan on the bed. Just then, Mother, I'm back. The door was pushed open with a bang, and Xiao Bao's small figure rushed in like a small cannonball. Mayan, who had been confused by Di Mingju's teasing, instantly sobers up. She abruptly pushes away Di Mingju, who wants to press down on her. Xiao Bao looks at the two people and immediately glares at Di Mingju. Mother, did this lecher bully you again? Chapter 687. It was really bullying, but it was not the kind of bullying that his son understood. Mu Yin guiltily pushes aside the sullen Di Mingju and takes Xiao Bao into her arms. Baby, did you have fun today? Xiao Bao's little face was flushed and his blue eyes were watery. He tried his best to keep a straight face as he nodded. Mother, it's the bridal chamber. It's fun. Mu Yin lovingly combed his disheveled hair and softly said, Nyangqin promises that the ghastly Flame Valley will become more and more fun in the future. Xiao Bao will also have a lot of people to accompany him, and he will become happier and happier. Little Treasure's brows curved up slightly as he nodded repeatedly, his face filled with happiness. But at the side, Di Mingju's good time is once again interrupted by this little guy. His complexion is already so black that it could drip water. Fun, he said darkly. Have you completed the cultivation task that I assigned to you? Whether it's for Mayan or Di Mingju's special feelings towards Xiao Bao, he had to ensure that Xiao Bao could cultivate as soon as possible and enter the cultivation world. Because only when the mother and son ascend as soon as possible can he truly be together with Mu Yin for a long time. And Mayan has long since reached the peak of the pre-celestial stage, even stepping into the pre-celestial full circle. He was only one step away from tempering his body and soul, transcending tribulation and descending. Therefore, after reaching the peak of the pre-celestial realm, Mu Yin stopped cultivating. Because if she wanted to leave, then she had to take little Bao with her. Perhaps Mu Yin only needs to leave the spirit-molding pill for the people of the Nether Flame Valley. However, she would never part with Xiao Bao. Di Mingju wants Mayan to ascend as soon as possible, so he can only let Xiao Bao enter the pre-celestial Great Circle as soon as possible. So, he'd set up a series of hellish cultivation assignments for little Bao during this period of time. That kind of cultivation intensity and terrifying mission, even Mu Yin, who had always been a person who raised Xiao Bao, couldn't help but feel a burst of heartache. In the end, before she could raise an objection, Di Mingju forcibly rebutted her with a sentence of, "A doting mother leads to spoiled children." But right now, Di Mingju feels that this brat's cultivation intensity is still not enough. Otherwise, why would she have so much time to ruin his plans time and time again? However, this little fellow was completely unafraid of his pressure and anger. The Junshang Darren, who can normally make the entire polar domain tremble when he gets angry in the Shoshin continent. But all she got in return was Xiao Bao's disdainful sidelong glare. She hugged Mu Yin, and the mother and son intimately provoked her. He raised his little face, a proud expression on his face. 36 cycles of spirit refinement and 81 cycles of qi circulation. Xiaobao has long since completed them. Mu Yin immediately kissed his little face and praised, "Little Bao is great. In order to reward the treasure, let's go eat a big meal tonight." She had gone too far at the wedding just now, and she hadn't had her fill yet. Xiaobao immediately turns his head to look at Dimingju, his big sparkling blue eyes full of expectation. "I want to eat steamed bear's paw, steamed deer's tail, roasted duck, roasted chicken." Mayan also looks at Dimingju, a pair of peach blossom eyes shimmering, incomparably charming. "I want to eat jade rabbit cabbage, ice flower snow lotus." Both mother and son's eyes sparkled, filled with anticipation. Even the fat rabbit in Xiao Bao's arms couldn't help but swallow its saliva. Although the devil was scary, the food he made was really delicious. It also wanted to try it again. Dimingju simply found it both funny and annoying. He reaches out and pinches the two similar faces, snappily saying, "If you want to eat, then come and help." Hearing this, Feng Wudi showed a satisfied expression. He knew this son of his best. He had been obedient and filial since he was young, and had never dared to disobey his orders. Therefore, when the Yin family declined, even though Yin Haoyin's father was his good friend. However, Feng Wudi's order made him not dare to help. Later, Feng Wudi asked him to break off the engagement between Feng Haidang and Yin Haoyin, and he did so. This time, he naturally did not dare to disobey her. However, what Papa Feng said next made Feng Wudi's expression change. Chapter 689. I thought that since Haitang is your granddaughter, you would at least have some affection for her, but I didn't expect you to be so cruel. For the sake of the family, you actually gave Haitang to that scum, Zhao Tianxiang. Do you know how many women have died in his hands all these years? Do you want my Haitang, my precious daughter, to end up like that? No, I won't accept it. Papa Feng stood up and rushed out the door. I'm going to bring my Haitang back now. Yes, yes. We're going to bring Haitang back now. Mother Feng shouted and rushed out with Papa Feng. Feng Yiqing sneered. Stop them. The guards of the Feng residence immediately rushed over and detained Papa Feng and Mother Feng. Papa Feng roared, Feng Yiqing, this is the Feng residence. What right do you have to be so arrogant? Let me go. Feng Yiqing waved his fan and said matter-of-factly, I've already sworn loyalty to old Master Feng. His wishes are my wishes, and his thoughts are my orders. You don't know what's good for you, and want to disregard the Feng residence's benefits and safety. Of course I have to have you detained. Feng Wudi's expression was extremely gloomy. Feng Qingyuan, you really disappoint me. Guards, lock them up in a cell, and don't let them eat for 3 days. Let them out when you've thought it through. Father, how can you do this? Haitang is your granddaughter. Let me go. Let me go. I want to save my daughter. Let me go. Feng Yiqing slowly walked to Papa Feng and Mother Feng and sneered, Even if you save Haitang now, what can you do? I'm afraid her body has already been tainted by Zhao Tianxiang. Oh, maybe she's missing an arm or a leg. We don't even know if her body is complete or not. What's the use of bringing such a broken flower back? Ah, shut up. Shut up. My Haitang won't. Mother Feng roared hysterically, her voice shrill and crazy. Feng Yiqing looked at her like a crazy shrew and laughed heartily. However, just as he straightened up, he saw the scene in front of him, and his laughter immediately stopped. Then, a look of disbelief appeared on his face. Not far away, at the gate of the Feng clan, a group of people swaggered in. They were led by a man and a woman who were so beautiful that they didn't seem like mortals, and the woman was holding onto a handsome little boy. But Feng Yiqing's eyes were unconsciously attracted to the people behind the 3 people. A beautiful woman dressed in red walked over leisurely beside the scar-faced tough man. But who else could this red-clothed woman be other than Feng Haitang, whom he had given to Zhao Tianxiang long ago? You, how could you? Why would Feng Haitang and Yin Haoyin appear here? Mu Yin and Di Mingju's trio stop and make way. When Feng Haitang saw Father Feng and Mother Feng in such a sorry state, tears welled up in her eyes and she pounced on them. Father, Mother, My unfilial daughter Haitang is back. Chapter 690. Haitang. My Haitang, is that really you? You're fine, fine. You're back. Mother isn't dreaming, right? Mother, it's me. Your Haitang is back. Feng Haitang held Mother Feng's hand and pressed it against her face. Choking, she said, I'm sorry, Father, Mother, I've made you worry. Father Feng snapped out of his daze and stammered. But they said that Zhao Tianxiang. Feng Haitang wiped away her tears and glanced sharply at the stiff Feng Yicheng. She said in a deep voice, I was indeed plotted against by Feng Yicheng, this heartless beast, and was sent to Zhao Tianxiang. But before Zhao Tianxiang could do anything to me, Hao Yin and Miss found me and saved me. Now I. Speaking up to this point, her face turned slightly red, and she seemed to be acting like a little girl. Now, I'm already married to Hao Yin. In 3 days, I brought him back to see you. Hao Yin? Which Hao Yin? Father Feng paused. Then, Yin Hao Yin walked up and stood beside Feng Haitang, gently hugging her. Only a blind person could see the love he had for Feng Haitang in his eyes. Father Feng's gaze fell on Yin Hao Yin's face. Suddenly, he looked shocked. Hao Yin, Yin Hao Yin, you're the kid from the Yin family? You're still alive? You're really alive? Yin Hao Yin nodded slightly and gestured. Feng Haitang explained, Hao Yin is injured and can't speak, but I've decided to be with him and I'm his wife now. Father, Mother, I hope you can bless me and Hao Yin together. Are you kidding me? Feng Wudi's angry voice rang out. What right does a mute have to be the son-in-law of the Feng family? Dream on. When those turbid eyes looked at Yin Hao Yin, they were filled with disgust and contempt. Then, he glared at Feng Haitang. Haitang, what's wrong with you? You should be the consort of the Weiyuan general's residence, but you're with this useless cripple. I order you now, immediately, go back to the Weiyuan general's residence and apologize to Prince Zhao. These words could be said to be extremely vicious. The people from the ink camp who had followed them in, hearing their boss being humiliated like this, each and every one of them goes mad with anger. How he wished he could tear this old man apart. However, this man was their sister-in-law's grandfather. Even if he was about to explode, he couldn't say it out loud. But they can't say it, and Mu Yin doesn't care. She smiled sweetly and said indifferently, General Weiyuan is dead. General Weiyuan's residence has been completely erased from the world. Old Master Feng, where do you want Haitang to go? If you really miss General Weiyuan so much, why don't I send you to see him? Pfft. Ru Yin couldn't help but laugh. When the people from the ink camp see that Mayan has opened her mouth, they immediately become unbridled, coming out with all sorts of presumptuous words. Exactly. Old fart, if you want to curry favor with General Weiyuan so much, why don't we send you down and you can go to the underworld and curry favor with him yourself? Who does that Zhao Tianxiang think he is? It was a pile of shit. How dare you compare yourself to our boss? Old man Feng, are you blind? Chapter 691. Old man Feng has never suffered such humiliation. He's so angry that he's blowing his beard and glaring, unable to control his emotions. You? Who the hell are you? Do you know where this is? How dare you come to my Feng family and behave atrociously? Someone, come and take down this group of madmen for me, including that Yin Hao Yin. I'd like to see who can walk out of the Feng mansion alive today. Feng Haitang's face suddenly sinks. Grandfather, are you really going to be so ruthless? Don't call me grandfather. Feng Wudi roars, I don't have a shameless granddaughter like you. Good. Feng Haitang sneers, I also don't want to have such a ruthless grandfather like you. Hearing that, the people of the ink camp immediately rubbed their fists. Boss, did you hear that? Sister-in-law doesn't recognize this grandfather. Can we start now? Yin Haoyin looks at Feng Haitang. This is Haitang's home. How to choose is up to Haitang herself. Feng Haitang looks at Mu Yin. There's a little hesitation in her eyes. Mu Yin smiles faintly and says, Instead of watching the roots and leaves rot little by little, it's better to uproot it and replant it into what you want. Or do you want the other people of the Feng family to live forever in the hands of such a heartless old man who can sacrifice everyone for his own benefit? Following Mu Yan's words, the little hesitation on Feng Haitong's face fades away, becoming extremely firm. Father Feng and Mother Feng look at her nervously and blankly. Haitang you. Feng Haitang smiles at them. Father, Mother, don't worry, things will be over soon. Saying that, she waves her hand and shouts in a deep voice. Capture Feng Wudi. Clean up the Feng mansion. If you encounter any resistance, kill without mercy. Oh no. Understood, sister-in-law. Hearing that, the people of the ink camp immediately cry out and excitedly rush out. Fang Yiqing's complexion is ashen. Taking advantage of the chaos, he quietly wants to slip away. However, before he could reach the door, he sees a tower-like figure standing in front of him, coldly looking at him. Yin Haoyin. Fang Yiqing's heart tightens, and he promptly makes a decision. Before the Yin family fell, Yin Haoyin's cultivation was only at Earth stage. How powerful could he be now? However, Yin Haoyin quickly used reality to tell him how powerful he was now. Fang Yiqing was beaten to death by Yin Haoyin's fists. In the end, his shattered organs spurted out from his mouth. All the bones in his body were broken. All the pain he wanted to inflict on others was returned to him 10 times, 100 times over. When Fang Yiqing breathed his last, Yin Haoyin stood up with red eyes and walked back to Feng Haitong's side. It was this person who had almost caused Haitang to be defiled by a beast, and had almost caused them to be separated by life and death. Yin Haoyin had long wanted to dismember this beast into 1,000 pieces. Now, he had finally done it, and the ink camp's attack also comes to an end. Feng Wudi was tied up and thrown to the ground. As for the guards of the Feng clan, they were either dead or surrendered. Feng Wudi glared at Feng Haitang and roared hysterically, evil woman, how dare you? How dare you disobey me? You bitch, you'll die a horrible death." Father Feng and Mother Feng were originally filled with guilt and unease about this turn of events. Chapter 692. Father Feng sighed softly, as if he had aged 10 years. "Haidang, she's your grandfather after all. You should at least not harm her life." Feng Haidang chuckled. "Don't worry, he is heartless, but I won't kill him. For the rest of his life, I will imprison him and provide him with good food and drink until he dies of old age." Hearing Feng Haitang's promise, Father Feng and Mother Feng heaved a sigh of relief. Feng Wudi cursed and struggled with all his might. Unfortunately, no one cared about him anymore. They directly took him away. At this moment, the Wind Mansion had completely changed owners. With Haitang's support, Father Feng became the master of the Feng family. Any member of the Feng Mansion who wants to rebel, after seeing the formidable force of those animals from the ink camp, all of them bow their heads in submission. When Father Feng and Mother Feng found out that it was Mu Yin who saved Yin Haoyin and their daughter, and even helped their daughter break through to the heaven stage, they were extremely grateful to her. When she found out that Mu Yin is that famous enchantress of medicine today, she was even more glad that her daughter was able to meet her and follow her. After settling the matter of the Feng family, Mayan gets up and heads towards the Wuwang Mountains at the border of Jingcheng Country and Huangyao Country. It was said that this was the place where the jade dragon snake most often appeared. The depths of the Wuwang Mountains can be said to be the most dangerous place in the entire Yinwu continent. Even the fat rabbit would be powerless when faced with countless strange beasts. Deming Ju can protect Mayan and Xiaobao, but he can't interfere in the Yinwu continent's affairs at will. He can't protect the others. Therefore, Mayan only brought 2 or 3 elites from the Taisu camp and the Ink camp to the Wuwang Mountains this time. As for Feng Haitang and Yin Haoyin, they were newcomers, so they naturally had to stay at the Feng clan for a few days. At the gate of the Feng residence, there were a few handsome horses. They were about to set off for the Wuwang Mountains. Seeing these horses, Deming Ju raises an eyebrow. Why aren't they carriages? Hearing the man's question, Mu Yin fiercely glares at him. This fellow still had the nerve to say that. If it weren't for him, Would she have needed to abandon the comfortable carriage and choose to ride a horse? One must know that Mayan likes to enjoy herself very much. If she could live a comfortable life, she definitely wouldn't want to work hard. But on the way to the Feng mansion, this guy Diming Ju borrowed the cover of the carriage, plus Xiao Bao has been cultivating in the space. Basically, nothing was taboo. Thinking of the scenes in the narrow carriage, Mayan can't help but feel her face and ears burn. She snappily said, "We're going to look for herbs, not for an outing. Why would we take a carriage?" If Jun Shangdaran doesn't want to ride a horse, then that's fine. You don't have to go. Mu Yan's tone was so bad that the Nether Fire Army thought that Di Mingju would definitely be angry. Immediately, all of them kept quiet out of fear. But who would have thought that not only is Di Mingju not angry, he even reveals an evil smile. His blazing gaze sweeps over Mayan, as if to say, "Ben Jun knows that Yin Yin is angry out of humiliation, but Ben Jun won't bother with you." Mayan is infuriated. She leaped onto the horse's back and thought to herself, "Now that there's no carriage, I don't believe that a lecher like you can still act like a hooligan in public." The little girl of the grand virtual camp, Shui Yin, brings the best horse in front of Di Mingju. "Junshang, this is the horse prepared for you." The little girl glanced at Mayan and couldn't help but secretly add, "Son-in-law, this horse is a pair with Mrs. Horse." Chapter 693. Her subordinates were getting more and more talkative. In the past, when she saw Di Mingju, wasn't it just like a mouse seeing a cat? She was so scared that she couldn't wait to hide as far away as possible. But now, they were calling him son-in-law. Di Mingju glances at the horse and casually pulls it in his hand. Just when everyone thought that he would mount the horse, he suddenly took a few steps forward, came to Mu Yan's side, and then jumped up. She could feel the man's warm and strong body pressing against her, as well as the iron-like arm around her waist. Mu Yan is simply dumbfounded. How could there be such a shameless man in this world? She looks over in embarrassment and annoyance. "Di Mingju, what are you doing? Get down here." Di Mingju leans close to her ear and whispers, "Of course it's according to Madame's wishes, to ride to Wuang Mountain Range In fact, it doesn't matter if we don't use a carriage. Your husband prefers this method." Mu Yin only feels that everyone's eyes are focused on her. This included Father Feng and Mother Feng, as well as Yin Hao Yin and Feng Haidang, who had come out to send them off. Her face was on fire, and she used her profound chi to push him down. Unfortunately, the man behind her didn't move at all. Instead, he hugged her even tighter. A deep and husky voice rings in her ears, "Yin Yin, do you think that Ben Jun would be afraid of being watched? Ben Jun can't wait for the whole world to know that you belong to Ben Jun, and only to me." He could hear the friendly laughter of the Nether Fire Army. There were also envious gazes looking at the two of them. Even Shui Yin and the other girls were whispering to each other. "I was wondering why Miss didn't want to ride in the carriage. It turns out that you want to ride with the son-in-law." Miss and son-in-law sitting together like this, it's like they're an immortal couple. I finally understand what it means to only envy Mandarin ducks and not immortals. Mu Yin. She wished she could go back to 2 hours ago and strangle the person who came up with this stupid idea. How could she overestimate Di Mingju's moral integrity? "Miss, son-in-law, the tea house in front is the last rest stop before entering the Wuang Mountain Range. Should we go in and eat something?" Little girl Shui Yin wiped the sweat from her forehead and asked. In the deepest part of the Wuang Mountain Range, the weather became abnormally hot. It was so hot that ordinary people couldn't bear it at all. This was also the reason why the depths of the Wuang Mountain Range were said to be dangerous. Apart from the fact that the exotic beasts inside were very powerful and densely packed together, there were many of them. It was also because the closer one got to the center of the Wuang Mountains, the harsher the environment became. This time, Mayan has only brought 2 people, the little girl Shui Yin from the Grand Void Camp, and Guan Hu from the Ink Camp. Both of their talents were extremely high in the Nether Flame Army, and they had already advanced to the Heaven rank some time ago. After Yin Hao Yin, the 4 leaders, and Chang Yu, they were the only 2 people in the Nether Flame Valley who had reached Heaven stage. Mu Yin brought them along mainly to let them consolidate their heaven stage cultivation in actual combat. As for why they didn't bring Changyu, that's naturally because the jealous and narrow-minded Junshang Darren wouldn't allow it. But even though their cultivation had already reached the heaven stage, Shui Yin and Guan who were still somewhat unable to bear the heat. On the contrary, it's Mu Yin and Diming Ju. Even in such a hot environment, the two of them were still stuck together, but they felt refreshed, not even a drop of sweat. Hearing Shui Yan's question, Mu Yin immediately said, "All right, let's rest in front for a while." Chapter 694. Many practitioners who enter the mountains to gain experience will stay here to rest, and also conduct transactions here. There are even people from the Ghost City who specially stay here, just to purchase the rare treasures from the Wuwang Mountains. As soon as she enters the tea house, Mayan feels a wild and unrestrained evil aura hitting her in the face. The people who rest here are all going to enter the Wuwang Mountains. Which one of them doesn't have extraordinary strength and ferocious bravery? Only then would they dare to appear here. And in this tea house, there's another scenery. It's those prostitutes who wear unusually revealing clothes. The skin of these women is darker than that of ordinary women, a healthy wheat color. She was wearing very little clothes. They were either transparent or only covered the important parts of her body, fully displaying her exquisite and graceful figure. They are either teasing and joking with those strong men, or snuggling into the arms of powerful practitioners, wrapping around their bodies like water snakes, doing their utmost to flirt. As soon as Mayan enters, she sees this bloody and erotic scene, and can't help but whistle. This tea house outside the Wuwang Mountains is really an interesting place. The entrance of the three quickly attracts the attention of other people. Whether it's men or women, they all cast their gazes towards the four people, and then each and every one of their eyes shine like wolves. What a handsome gongzi! The fastest to react are the women who are used to doing the flesh trade. When they see Diming Ju's incomparably handsome countenance, each and every one of them is itching unbearably, wishing that they could immediately pounce on him. I don't know if Gongzi needs this servant to serve him. This servant doesn't need gold coins, no, even if you want this servant to pay for it. Saying that, the nearest person has already pounced on him. That impatient and unrestrained appearance simply makes people gasp in amazement. Ingmei is dumbfounded. She even forgets to protect her own master. She never thought that the mortals of the Yinwu continent would actually be so valiant, even daring to take liberties with their Jun Shang. Even in the Shoshin continent above the ninth heaven, there has never been a woman who dared to act rashly in front of Jun Shang. On the contrary, the little girl Shuiyin is the first to react. Like a little wolf dog protecting its master, she rushes out and opens her arms to block. Impudent. This is my family's son-in-law. My family's son-in-law isn't someone that just any woman can think of. You all better behave yourself. When the 2 or 3 women hear this, their eyes unconsciously wander over Mu Yan's face. Seeing that she was as beautiful as snow, he immediately felt a little resentful. But her gaze lingers on Diming Ju's perfect face and figure with some reluctance. She unwillingly asks Mayan, "How about renting your man to us for a day? You can name the price." Mu Yan couldn't hold it in any longer and burst out laughing. She laughed so hard that she rocked back and forth and almost couldn't stand steadily. Diming Ju's face is already as black as charcoal. The cold air emitting from his body makes those prostitutes, who are used to seeing great storms and great waves, to reveal an aghast expression. "Get lost." He spat out coldly. The entire tea house fell silent, and everyone couldn't help but shiver. Even those ferocious-looking burly men, who were originally drooling with greed when they saw Mu Yin, were all as silent as cicadas out of fear under this intimidation, not daring to move even an inch from their positions. In the tea house, only Mu Yan's clear and unbridled laughter reverberates. Chapter 695. This woman has no conscience. Seeing him being coveted by another woman, she's not even the slightest bit jealous. Thinking of this, Diming Ju's face darkens a bit, and he suddenly tightens his grip on Mayan. Does that mean that in Mayan's heart, she doesn't like him at all? Mayan suddenly feels her waist tighten. Dimingju's strength restraining her seems to be itching to break her waist. She frowns and looks up, about to speak. Suddenly, an arrogant female voice comes from the second floor of the tea house. This man, this princess wants him. As soon as the voice falls, a yellow figure descends from the sky, landing in front of Mayan and the others. Following her were a few middle-aged men with extremely high cultivation bases. The woman who is speaking looks to be in her early 20s. She has a gorgeous appearance and a fiery figure. Although her clothes aren't as revealing as those prostitutes, they're still half-covered, stirring up wild and fanciful thoughts. As soon as they see her come out, the entire tea house immediately goes into an uproar. Oh, I didn't expect this little evil star to be here today. There's going to be a good show to watch. Being fancied by this Li Wan'er, this young couple is out of luck. Not necessarily. Look at that man. His pressure is so frightening. Maybe he doesn't even put this Li Wan'er in his eyes. How could that be? Even if they're more powerful, they don't have any backing. How could they contend against a country's princess? The rising and falling sounds of discussion reach Mayan's ears, making her slightly narrow her eyes. Li Wan'er doesn't even look at her. Her greedy eyes look up and down at Dimingju's face. Soon, her eyes reveal a determined look. Say your name. Li Wan'er raises her chin at Dimingju and arrogantly says, "This princess doesn't care if you came to the Wuwang Mountains to gain experience or to hunt for treasures. I guarantee that as long as you abandon this woman and follow this princess, from now on, you can have wind and rain as you wish." The people standing in front of her are silent, like a needle dropping. Guanhu, Shuiyan, and Ingmei are all fucking stupid. Is there something wrong with this woman? She could provoke anyone, but she actually provokes their Junshang/son-in-law. Is she tired of living? However, Li Wan'er feels that she has given a great advantage to the common people. As soon as she finishes speaking, she steps forward, wanting to pull Dimingju. However, before her hand could touch Dimingju, she finds that her hand is grasping empty air. The man who was originally very close to him had already walked past him and was leisurely walking forward. Mu Yan's hand is holding Dimingju's wrist, pulling him forward. It was as if Li Wan'er was air, and she didn't even see his existence. Jun Shangdaran, who is being dragged, is unexpectedly very obedient. The coldness on his face fades away, and the corner of his mouth traces a faint smile. Li Wan'er can only watch helplessly as Mu Yin and Dimingju completely ignore her and directly walk over. Her whole face is distorted. "Stop right there." Li Wan'er roared furiously. Unfortunately, no one paid any attention to her. This time, even Guanhu, Shuiyan, and the others were chatting and laughing as they walked over. It was as if she did not exist. Chapter 696. Mu Yin casually pushes her hand away and says unhurriedly, "I'm sorry, I only heard a dog barking just now. I didn't notice that you were calling me." Poochie. Many people in the tea house could not help but laugh. This girl was so beautiful, but he didn't expect her words to be so poisonous. Weren't these words implying that Li Wan'er was a dog? Li Wan'er clearly understands the meaning behind Mu Yan's words, and her face suddenly turns sinister. "Slut, you dare to humiliate this princess." She screams and swings her hand towards Mayan's face. However, he was caught by Ingmei midway and violently flung to the ground. Li Wan'er was dizzy from the fall. When she came back to her senses, she immediately roared at her subordinates behind her. "A bunch of trash. What are you waiting for? Why aren't you arresting all of them? Other than that man, it doesn't matter if the others are killed or maimed." In an instant, Li Wan'er's subordinates surrounded them so tightly that not even a drop of water could escape. The oppressive might of a heaven's limit expert was emitted, causing everyone in the tea house to shiver. Looking at Mu Yin and the others, their eyes were filled with pity. Li Wan'er crawled up from the ground, gritted her teeth and sneered, "Bitch, now you know who you've offended, right?" Mu Yin picks her ears. "Did I offend a person? I thought it was a bitch in heat." Buffed. Buffed. This time, The people in the tea house burst into laughter. She actually called Li Waner a bitch. Was this girl tired of living? It should be known that in this area, Li Waner had always relied on her identity as the princess of the Huangyao nation to be a tyrant. Furthermore, she was extremely fond of men. As long as a man passed by this tea house, the princess would take a fancy to him and forcefully take him as her own. During this period, there were people who resisted. However, no matter how much he resisted, how could he resist the princess of a country? Therefore, most people could only choose to swallow their anger. Now that this young girl had humiliated Li Waner like this, her fate would probably be even more miserable than the previous people. But when they heard Li Waner being mercilessly humiliated, why did they feel so refreshed? Li Waner was really mad this time. Good. Very good. Bitch, you've really angered me. I will let you know the consequences of offending this princess. With a wave of his hand, a group of heaven-grade warriors immediately approached Mu Yin and the others. Mu Yin nudges Diming Ju with her elbow. You've provoked a debt of love. Go and settle it yourself. But Diming Ju is unperturbed as he says, I'm not going. Mu Yin glared at him. This guy usually hid his appearance, making it hard for people to see his true appearance. He didn't know what was wrong with him along the way, but he just had to reveal his true face. In the end, he had seduced the hearts of countless girls along the way and attracted a lot of rotten peach blossoms. This time, if it wasn't for his calamitous face, he wouldn't have provoked a fool like Li Waner. If he didn't deal with it, who would? Diming Ju gives her a meaningful look, faintly saying, Yin Yin, someone is coveting your family's man. Shouldn't you stand up to protect me, your husband? What fucking protection? You're the emperor of the immortal cultivation continent. Do you need someone to protect you? Mu Yin almost laughs at Diming Ju's shameless words. Unfortunately, Diming Ju doesn't even give her time to think, and directly pushes her into the encirclement of those heaven-grade warriors. Ying Mei is unperturbed. Chapter 697. But the practitioners in the tea house are in an uproar. What's wrong with this man? He looks powerful, but he's just an embroidered pillow and rotten straw bag? He actually let that delicate little girl face the enemy alone. Scum. Good-looking men. Sure enough, they're all unreliable. Alas, what a pity for that little girl. She's going to end up with her head separated from her body at such a young age. However, these people's sighs and discussions have just begun. Over there, they hear a series of bangs. Soon after, everyone in the tea house is dumbstruck to find that Li Waner's guards have fallen. More than 10 heaven-grade practitioners. They've only just started a conversation, and they've all fucking fallen. A large number of people can't help but rub their eyes and pinch their thighs, wanting to prove if it's true. Shuiyin is already holding her small face, her eyes full of worship. Miss is really too handsome. If Miss was a man, I would want to marry her. Before she could finish speaking, a cold air hits her in the face. Shuiyin immediately shivers, keeping quiet out of fear. Diming Ju's heart is even more stifled. Does it mean that he not only has to guard against men, but also women? Junmayan, this woman who doesn't let him have peace of mind. However, when that troublesome girl steps on the corpses on the ground, turns around and shows him a bright and beautiful smile, all the depression in Diming Ju's heart turns into deep love. Jun Shangdaran, are you satisfied now? Diming Ju grabs her hand and gently wipes away the blood that splashed on it. The words that come out of his mouth are very infuriating. In the future, remember to protect your husband like this, understand? Mayan rolls her eyes at him, then looks at Li Waner. Li Waner is scared silly at this time, her body shivering. Seeing Mayan looking at her, she immediately steps back in horror, her voice trembling as she says, You can't kill me. I'm the princess of Huangyao. If you kill me, my imperial father will not let you off. Mayan crouches down, looking at her with a smile that isn't a smile. It's not impossible for me to spare your life. Li Waner's eyes brighten, thinking that Mayan is afraid of her identity as a princess. Unexpectedly, her next words were, however, I'm very annoyed by your barking beside my ear. It's impossible not to pay a price. How about this? You slap yourself 100 times, then crawl 3 times in this tea house while barking like a dog, and I'll spare your life. How about that? Li Waner glared at her fiercely and screamed, Don't you dare! I'm a male. Mu Yin slowly raised the sword in his hand and pressed it against Li Waner's neck. He chuckled. I also feel that this punishment is a little troublesome. Since it's like this, you can just go and die. As he finished speaking, he exerted force in his hand, and the ice-cold blade had already cut open the skin on Li Waner's neck. Bright red beads of blood oozed out. No, no, don't kill me. Looking into Mayan's pitch-black eyes without the slightest ripple, Li Waner could only see calmness within them. At this moment, she finally realized that the woman in front of her would really kill her. She did not care about her identity as a princess at all. Thus, Li Waner broke down, and even her feces and urine came out. I'm willing to accept the punishment. I'm willing. Woo-woo-woo. Please spare me. Mu Yin frowns in disgust and takes a few steps back. Chapter 698. Because she was afraid that Mu Yin would really kill her, every slap was very heavy. After 30 slaps, she fainted in fear and pain. Mayan sneers, with just this bit of ability, you still dare to come out and bully men and tyrannize women. This tea house has been turned into a foul atmosphere by Li Waner, and the stench is overwhelming. Mu Yin and the others can't stay any longer. Just as she was about to leave, the people in the tea house began to defend her. Little girl, a man who doesn't protect you in times of crisis is unreliable. Don't be fooled by his good looks. That's right, little girl. You're so powerful and as beautiful as a flower. Could it be that you're still afraid of not being able to find a good man? Ahem. Miss, my name is Gudada. I'm 28 years old this year, and I'm at the heaven rank. May I know your name? I fell in love with you at first sight. There was actually someone who recommended himself. The corner of Mu Yan's mouth twitches. Next to him, Di Mingju's complexion is ice cold. His eyes so cold that it's almost as if they're going to freeze this place. He didn't care what others thought of him. But if anyone wanted to covet Mayan, Ingmei shivers, knowing that his family's Junshang is really angry this time. Once the emperor was enraged, corpses would float for thousands of miles. What was wrong with this group of mortals? Why did he have to court death? However, just as Di Mingju is about to explode, suddenly, a clear and melodious voice rang out, suppressing all the voices in the tea house. What does it matter if he's reliable or not? It's fine as long as I'm reliable. Mayan casts a sidelong glance at everyone. Her smile is charming and languid, but it also carries the spirit of disdainfully looking down on the world. What I want, I will snatch it myself. My man only needs to be responsible for being as beautiful as a flower. I like to spoil and spoil my man. What does it have to do with you idlers? Saying that, she pulls Di Mingju's hand and turns around to leave. Ingmei stood there in a daze, completely dumbfounded. Wait a minute. What did she just hear? Miss June is responsible for spoiling and spoiling Junshang, and Junshang is responsible for being as beautiful as a flower. Wait a minute. Was there something wrong with this? Junshang, didn't you come all the way from the Shoshin continent to marry Miss June? Why do you feel that you are going to be married by Miss June? The point is, you're already being raised by someone. So why are you still smiling so happily, Junshang? Shuiyin and Guan who look at Mu Yan's domineering back as she pulls Di Mingju away, their hearts full of worship. As expected of their young miss, he actually wanted to spoil and spoil His Majesty, and even made His Majesty responsible for being as beautiful as a flower. Who else in the world could do that? In fact, Mu Yin regretted the words the moment they left her mouth. At that moment, she didn't know why she had gone crazy. Listening to those people slander and disrespect Di Mingju, he unexpectedly feels the anger in his heart rising in bursts. Then, in the heat of the moment, he blurted out these words. My man, I pamper and spoil him. He's as beautiful as a flower. Heavens, what did she just say? Mayan abruptly stops in her tracks, putting on a brave front while being timid at heart. She glares at Di Mingju. Forget everything that I just said. Di Mingju's face carries a never-before-seen smile. When Mu Yin wanted to let go of his hand, he pulled it back. Which sentence did you forget? Did you admit that Ben Jun is your man? Or did you forget that you said that you would spoil me? Love me? Wait a minute. She didn't say love at all. Chapter 699. Mu Yin fiercely glares back. Just as she's about to speak, a hand gently clasps her chin. Then, a kiss gently falls on her lips. The man's unique scent hits her in the face, caressing her lips and igniting the passion in her body. Yin Yin, I'm very happy, the man says in a low, husky, magnetic voice. Even if you still refuse to admit it, I'm sure that you have me in your heart. Mu Yin opens her mouth to speak, but the man's tongue has already gone straight in, taking away all her breath and her ability to think. When the kiss is over, her muddle-headed reason returns, and Mu Yan's hair stands up in hindsight. Because as soon as she opens her eyes, she finds that there are at least a dozen people watching them. Moreover, they're actually on the main road outside the tea house. This bastard. Does he even know what shame and integrity are? Junshang says, Ben Jun only has Yin Yin in his eyes. What are the other mortals? Can't see. Deep in the Wuwang Mountains. The temperature here is so high that even martial practitioners can't stand it. Shuiyin and Guan, whose sweat has already soaked their hair and clothes. But they don't seem to feel the heat at all, as they're working hard to kill the strange beasts of Wuwang Mountains. As the battle goes on, the two have gone from being flustered at the beginning to being skillful and at ease now. But they still look indescribably distressed. Even Shuiyin, this little girl, is covered in dirt, and her hair is stuck with mud and tied into knots. In stark contrast to them is Mu Yin, who's sitting on the side. There's a huge umbrella on top of her head, and fruits and roasted strange beast meat are placed on a flattened stone next to her. Di Mingju is grilling meat for her without complaint, and from time to time, he would grab a fruit and feed it to her. Besides eating, the only thing she has to do is occasionally pluck a few strings to prevent Shuiyin and Guanhu from falling into the encirclement. Nyang Qin. Xiaobao rushes over. There's a little sweat on his rosy little face, but his blue eyes are bright, and he throws himself into Mu Yan's arms. Mu Yan doesn't care about the sweat on his body and kisses his pink and tender little face. Did you have fun? Xiaobao nods. Then, he fished around in his storage device. Mother, this is an exotic beast, that bunny, and I just hunted. It has a lot of meat for Mother to eat, and these fruits. Mu Yan smiles and nods. Thank you, Xiaobao. Nyang Qin likes it very much. Xiaobao's eyes were curved, carrying the childishness of a 4- or 5-year-old child, indescribably cute. But very quickly, he straightened his face and said with some frustration, but the jade dragon snake that Mother wants, Bunny, and Big Sistering may have been looking for a long time, but we still can't find it. Mu Yin gently wipes the sweat from his forehead and is about to comfort him. Suddenly, Xiaobao was lifted from the back of his collar. If you haven't found it, then what are you still doing here? Di Mingju says coldly, still not going to find it? Xiaobao glared at him angrily. Let me go. This scoundrel. He's trying to steal his mother again. Unfortunately, to Di Mingju, his struggles can't even be considered as a cool breeze. Just as Xiaobao was about to curse out loud, a piece of fragrant roasted meat was suddenly stuffed into his mouth. Go early and come back early. At night, the strange beasts in this Wuwang mountain range won't be something that you little guys can deal with. He feels the roasted meat melting in his mouth. Chapter 700. After taking a few steps, he stops and looks at Mayan. Nyang Qin, Xiaobao and Bunny will definitely find the jade dragon snake. Mayan beamed and said, all right. Nyang Qin also believes that Xiaobao will definitely find it. Her family's Xiaobao had always been endlessly lucky. Didn't he find a bunch of treasures wherever he went? The Wuwang mountain range was unimaginably huge, and the number of jade dragon snakes could be counted on one's fingers. If she wanted to find it, she could only rely on her baby and the fat rabbit. Deming Ju sits down next to Mayan. His actions are very habitual as he picks her up, placing her in his arms. Mu Yin pushed him away in disgust. Hot? Who knew that as soon as she finished speaking, the person hugging her below her would turn cold as though his body temperature had automatically adjusted. Although Mu Yan's cultivation was high and she wasn't that afraid of the heat, she couldn't help but let out a comfortable sigh when she touched such an ice-cold feeling in this scorching weather. Deming Ju kisses her soft and warm lips, his voice slightly hoarse. Yin Yin, is it comfortable? Do you want to be more comfortable? Ben Jun will definitely satisfy you. This scoundrel, why did he have to speak so ambiguously and cause people to have wild and fanciful thoughts? Don't you see that not far away, Shui Yin and Guan, who are both blushing and looking over with ambiguous expressions? Mayan is about to get up from Deming Ju's arms, when suddenly, the sound of footsteps comes from afar. She raised her eyebrows and concentrated her profound chi in her ears. Soon, the conversation could be heard. It's so hot here. One of those two bitches has a big belly and the other is covered in wounds. They wouldn't come here, would they? Don't say any more. Master has ordered us to find that bitch, even if we have to turn the entire mountain upside down. Let's hurry up and search. Otherwise, it'll be even more troublesome when it gets dark. What if they have already run out of the Wuwang Mountains? Do you think they can escape? Our men are guarding every entrance in this mountain range. Mu Yin listened to the conversation of the men and looked thoughtfully at a bush not far away. At this moment, the group of people seemed to have noticed the sounds of fighting. Let's go and take a look. Maybe it's those two bitches. In Mu Yan's field of vision, a group of men wearing the same style of yellow clothes quickly appeared. Every one of them had a very high cultivation. At the very least, they were at the early stages of Heaven Realm. The two leading them had already reached the peak of the Heaven stage. Seeing Mayan's group, they are obviously stunned. They didn't expect to meet someone in such a dangerous place like the Wuwang Mountains. After seeing Mayan's appearance, the eyes of the two leaders suddenly brightened. May I know which sect you are from? Have you seen a man and a pregnant woman here? Mu Yin glances at them and ignores them. In Deming Ju's eyes, apart from Mayan, all other creatures are trash. Shui Yin and Guan, who saw that the mist didn't give them any orders, so they focused on attracting strange beasts and fighting them to accumulate experience. The air froze for a moment. The yellow-clothed man in the lead had a sinister expression on his face. I'm asking you a question. Did you hear me? Boss. A wretched-looking man at the side rolled his eyes around Mu Yan's body and said with a lewd smile, I think we don't need to look for those two bitches anymore. Chapter 701. Hearing his subordinate's words, the leader of the yellow-clothed men look at each other. Then their gazes fall on Mayan, revealing greedy and amazed expressions. You're right, he swallows, approaching Mayan step by step, although it would take a lot of time to get a woman pregnant with a child. But if we bring back such a top-notch product, it would be different. After saying that, he thinks that he would see the angry and fearful expressions of this group of people, who knew that Shui Yin and Guan who would only look at them with pity, minding their own business and continuing to attack the strange beasts. They don't know what method they've used, but these strange beasts don't seem to see them at all. They just roar and concentrate on attacking Shui Yin and Guan who. As for Mayan, she finally raises her head, slightly narrowing her eyes at them. Tell me, where did you trash come from? Trash? This woman has eaten a bear's heart and a leopard's gall. She actually dares to call them trash? The yellow-clothed man takes a step forward, looking at her with malicious eyes, about to speak. Suddenly, there's a loud bang, and a sharp pain comes from the back of his head. The yellow-clothed man gives a muffled groan, his whole body throwing itself to the ground. Then, he saw a small figure and a round fat rabbit step over his body one after another. Nyang Qin, we found the jade dragon snake. Xiao Bao doesn't notice the yellow-clothed man under his feet as he pounces into Mayan's arms. The fat rabbit also makes a howling sound, bouncing to the side. It even audaciously steals a piece of barbecue from Di Mingju's side to show off its contribution. You dare. The yellow-clothed man gets up from the ground, his face covered in dust, 2 nosebleeds flowing from his nose. He roars, "I'll kill you." Bang! There's another sound, and he's kicked to the ground once again. But this time, he can't get up. The last thing the yellow-clothed man hears is the roar of beasts, as well as the rumble of 10,000 beasts galloping. Then, with a snap, the yellow-clothed man's head is crushed, red, yellow, and white brain matter spilling all over the ground. In a split second, he's dead. The remaining yellow-clothed man doesn't even have the time to resist, and is also trampled into a puddle of meat. Xiao Bao hugged Mu Yin and hugged her neck tightly. Although there was no fear on his little face, he still revealed a nervous expression. The fat rabbit jumped up and down. It was the first time it let out a weak whimper in front of a mutated beast. It's not that this rabbit is weak, but there are simply too many enemies. This rabbit can't control them all. Mu Yan's expression is somewhat dignified. It seems that this jade dragon snake is the leader of all the beasts in this Wuang mountain range.